First on film and entertainment, we are talking the weekend that Essendon has finally capitulated, a season that had capitulated about 8 weeks ago, Gregory King. I am mortified. Can you understand that?
You really take it to heart, Alex, when you lose.
Oh, my golly. Greg, I'm tearing strips off anything that's red and black at the moment. It's shocking. You sort of tease, you tantalise. It happens every season. Oh, anyway, it lasts 3. And, you're second on the ladder and you plummet and you continue to plummet and, the exasperation. Peter, can you understand that? Peter Krauss?
No, I don't understand it at all. It sounds
hang on. It's like
pretty dull.
It's like watching a bad movie that starts out with a lot of promise and then disintegrates. You can relate to that?
I still don't see the connection between movies and football.
Oh, for God's sake. Man, listen, it's about that. Often, you think about a script, Peter. When somebody writes a grand script or starts out writing a grand script and doesn't know how to finish, that's often the case, isn't it, in cinema?
Yes, but every week there's a new match, whereas there's only one film.
Yes, but the point being that it's so hard to make a consistently great film. There are ebbs and flows. When we give scores, I in terms of the perfect game, there's almost no such thing. Is there such a thing as a perfect movie? It's very, very hard to achieve that. I mean, in football terms, Peter, the most successful season in the history of the game was my team in the year 2000, where they won with an average winning margin of 10 goals, which is a large amount, and they won all but one game. So it still wasn't perfect. Now, my best movie of all time, which I think was perfect, a very distressing watch, was the Benigno, what's the Italian Life is
Roberto Benigni.
Roberto Benigni, Life is Beautiful. I thought that was an extraordinary movie. But there are very few films in my history of reviewing, which goes back a fair distance, that I've given the perfect score to. What about you?
Oh, there've been a few films that I've given 10 out of 10. It's there. I mean, nothing is ever completely perfect.
Well, that's the point that I'm making. And Greg, what about you in terms of perfect scores of films? And you as a lifelong St Kilda supporter, I mean, gee, you've gone through your own grief. So, have you seen the perfect football game ever played?
I don't know. Probably the 1989 grand final, wasn't it? And when about 25 goals kicked by both teams.
Yeah, okay. And what about movie-wise?
Yeah, I'll give you a few films.
Okay, so what? I know we've done this before, but the best movie you've ever seen, Greg?
Well, I still say Shawshank Redemption is my favourite, but best movies would be a few other ones. I'd put in there Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great film.
Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Where Eagles Dare, I love.
Okay. Yeah, I'd certainly amongst those, no question about that. The One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was a pretty damn good film. Peter Krauss, what about you? Your best films of all time, or best film?
Best film, Metropolis, 1927. Fritz Lang's brilliant film.
Well, you're already an old man at that stage, weren't you? So you would have seen it when you were past your prime, correct?
I was there at the launch, absolutely.
Well, you were there. You and Adam were best mates when the Earth was formed, weren't you?
I was a bad apple.
You were, exactly, a bad seed. So yeah, that's my attempt to try to convince you that there's all of the sporting endeavour in movies or vice versa. You never know which way something's going to play out. By the way, and I'm going to talk about this time permitting, and I'm going to. I think I saw the most surprisingly great show that I've ever seen. I saw that on Friday night. It was just amazing. And I had this big conflict, Greg, because Essendon was playing. I tried to go to all of my games, and I'd heard this was magnificent, and it was. Murder for Two is extraordinary. It's only on until the 25th of the month. It's at the Arts Centre.
Couldn't you go on to see Essendon last night and seen the play another night?
There are some, I'll put this delicately, there are some shows that the publicists and the producers basically say you've got one night to see it, and unless you're on death's door, you should be seeing it that night. Now, at times I'll test that, and at other times I won't. And I really was desperate to try and sort of go to Essendon last night, especially because it was Dyson Heppell's farewell. Mind you, I hope he plays next week in Brisbane. But I just thought it was the right thing to do. And yet at times you need to do the right thing, Greg, you know? That was why I ended up going. But gee whiz, it's just it's in the Fairfax studio, the smaller theatre, and it's 100 minutes of mind-bogglingly brilliant comedic. Think Agatha Christie crossed with the best comedy that you've ever seen, and you go some way to understanding how damn good this was. I don't know whether it's ever been in Melbourne, but it was Hayes Theatre in Sydney put on two lots of performances. There was an encore, and I just was blown away by it. It's just outstanding theatre. And we talk about perfection, Peter. They did not miss a beat. It's not only they imagine this, they're dueling on the piano, so they're both on the one stool at the Steinway, which is a baby grand black piano in the middle of a proper stage setting, which reminded me of an Agatha Christie, you know, the wooden panels and library type books, etc., etc. And then you've got them both. One of them performs 12 characters and is so acrobatic, they're throwing themselves around and flouncing themselves about, and the other plays a detective. And it's got all of the what was the Agatha Christie novel, and then there were none, or whatever it was, and the Mousetrap and stuff like that. It's got all of those ingredients, but imagine the cleverest forms of writing, the greatest choreography, superb musicality and lyricism, and then you've got the sets, the staging, the direction. It is just incredible. It really is. Peter, you who never go to theatre, if there's one, and it's really good price, it's not a pricey show. So that in itself, because I mean, Greg, you know, if you go to a musical, you could be paying upwards of $200 if you want to get a prime seat these days. This is certainly well under $100, and it's well worth seeing. It's only until the 25th of the month. I hope they come back. I hope they fill the stadium, the theatre, the Fairfax every time. Standing ovation. I don't think there was a person left in their seats last night. It was that heroic, the performances. So there you go. I've given you a review without giving you a full review at this point. Let's talk about a movie on Jair 88 FM. It's one that opened a couple of weeks ago, but Peter, you and I saw it in a relatively sparse cinema. In fact, we've got to give Eddie Tamir some praise for his theatre, his diversity of theatrical offerings that he puts on at his three theatres in Melbourne and his theatre in Sydney. We saw it at the Classic, did we not?
Yes.
So, and I make a point of walking up the stairs, Greg. Have you been to the Classic or not?
Yeah, I've been there quite a few times.
Have you walked to the top and you've got all these expressions or lines from famous movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so clever. And then you've also got sort of photographs or on the walls as you sort of mounting the stairs. You've got wonderful scenery of some of the great movies.
If you go to the Lido Cinema in Hawthorne that Eddie Tamir runs also, in the gents' toilet, there's pages and pages of film scripts on the walls there. So you can read something while you're having a leak.
It's interesting that you say that. Obviously, I go to the wrong bathroom because I've never seen that. Which bathroom is it? The one as you first walk up the stairs, or because that's the one that I go to? And no, I haven't seen it.
Oh well, there you go. You've missed something.
Oh, I have. I mean, it's great when people, you know, that. I mean, memorabilia is huge, and it's kind of, I don't know. It's interesting how. By the way, have you been following? And this is another aside. Have you both of you been following the controversy surrounding the Blake Lively movie and the interviews? Have you followed that during the week, Peter?
Not at all.
Greg?
No. I know you mentioned it last week, but it hasn't really piqued my interest.
Well, it just continues. And there was another, reasonably scandalous type article this morning questioning whether or not Blake Lively's career is going to take a hit because of it. I mean, it just seems bizarre. If you don't say the right thing, it's like the controversy surrounding we're not allowed to call it breakdancing, but, what formerly was known as breakdancing and the Australian performer at the Olympic Games. I just think that's horrible. I mean, okay, she didn't score any points because the points were more difficult to score. It's not like diving when you're diving off a board. But, I mean, you imagine how traumatized, and I've watched her full video where she's responded to the criticism and says she's going to take a break and then we'll have more to say. But I think the Australian Olympic Committee did absolutely the right thing by, there was a petition that was circulating about this and they got that banned and so on. I mean, golly, do people not, if people suddenly commit sort of heinous acts because of being goaded into it, people can be really nasty. I know our job as reviewers is to sort of praise something and then to basically give our opinion, but it's not about playing the man. It just seems to be the world has gone to hell in a handbasket, Peter, since social media has been as prolific as it has been. Don't you agree?
Well, you can be anonymous and say hateful things, so that's why people get away with it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that bothers me most, that people do get away with it and they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. It keeps on going. It really, it's irritating in the extreme is my way of putting this. Anyway, it is what it is. Right, so we've taken a few deviations times 3. So let's talk about a movie called Trap. Now, you like me must have seen and must have appreciated the grand opening to M. Night Shyamalan's career, right? The Sixth Sense. Great movie, wonderful praise that went with it, and a huge career was assured. Well, it's taken a few deviations, hasn't it, Greg? I mean, a lot of his movies have been panned, unfortunately. I think, again, some unfairly. I've enjoyed quite a bit of M. Night Shyamalan's work. What would you do? You think he's been has he ever reached the heights of the Sixth Sense again?
No, but he's come close a couple of times. But he has interesting premises, but they don't always hold up to the final act. There, he often throws in it.
You mean come together at the end? You mean?
Yeah, he often throws in that twist that you're looking for there. Some work, some don't. But he's made a few interesting films, shall we say? But he's made a couple of absolute turkeys as well, like After Earth.
Oh yes, okay.
And Last Airbender.
What about you, Peter? What are your thoughts about M. Night Shyamalan?
Mixed bag, yes, because he desperately seeks a twist to grab the audience, like the film The Village, which actually did quite well.
Yes.
I thought that was a good example. But nevertheless, his films are flawed because he so desperately is seeking
attention.
Yeah, but seeking that special twist that no one could see coming.
Well, this one, he again wrote and directed it. Trap runs for 105 minutes and is rated M. It stars one of his daughters, and I thought she was terrific. Salika is her name. It's a really tense psychological thriller, and it's sort of claustrophobic. So you've got a character called Riley, played by Ariel Donahue. She's a teenager, and she's got a huge pop crush. And this is quite timely because, of course, you've got Taylor Swift continuing with her concert tour, and then the drama of what happened in Austria and having to cancel the Austrian leg of her tour because of threats to her safety. Anyway, so in this case, the huge star is known as Lady Raven, and that's the character played by Salika Shyamalan. And her dad, her character's dad, I'm talking about Riley's dad, is called Cooper, and that's a Josh Artner character. He's a firefighter. He's secured a couple of highly sought-after tickets to one of Lady Raven's gigs. And Riley, couldn't be more excited. So when they arrive, what we notice and what he notices as the father immediately is this massive security presence. Guards are at every door, and basically they're prominent inside the venue as well as outside. So once they enter the stadium, patrons are not allowed to exit until the show's over. So Cooper, the father's keen to understand exactly what's going on, and it becomes clear that the FBI has received intelligence that a serial killer is at the venue, and this killer could strike again at any moment. And the lead FBI agent, Dr. Josephine Grant, played by Hayley Mills, is naturally intent on not allowing that to happen. But despite her best endeavours and those of the other troops on the ground, the perpetrator looks to have slipped through the net. And it's also evident that this perpetrator has a trump card up his sleeve to ensure that things go his way. So there's a real danger, and among those at greatest risk is the performer Lady Raven. So again, think Taylor Swift. I've deliberately danced around much of the plotting so as not to spoil the surprises. And before this is over, there are twists aplenty. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's exactly what you want with a movie of this ilk. I commend it for it. So, okay, it's far-fetched, no question about that. But whilst the twists are far-fetched, the premise is not. So, Greg, you and I go to the MCG a lot. We go to Marvel Stadium a lot. And I always worry. I know that they do the security checks and every other person is checked, with their, whatever you call it, the wand that they wave over you and they take a cursory look at the bags. But, there is a real threat to me every time you go to a venue, whether it be a theatre, whether it be to a movie house. I mean, you could live your life in fear, but it's much more real than when we were kids. Do you not agree?
Oh, yeah, but I'm not really as conscious of it here in Melbourne.
Is that right? Okay. No, I'm acutely aware of it. Peter, what about you? I mean, you don't go to the big venues, but you go to theatres and shows and not shows, that you go to movie houses a lot. Has that ever crossed your mind?
It actually hasn't. In fact, most of the events that have happened have been overseas, in Europe and so on. Australia seems to be somewhat impervious to this.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I don't agree.
Peter, I'm sorry, Alice, you think it's something like happening like in a movie like 2-Minute Warning or Black Sunday or something, are you?
Well, I'm also thinking about what Peter was reflecting on, that, you've got that, what was the movie where somebody broke in and shot a large number of people, and the concert that's happened at as well. It's no longer, you can't say that Australians are safe. Society is a lot worse than it was when we were kids, in my opinion. And that's why I'm acutely aware of what's going on. Obviously, we are on a station that ostensibly got a Jewish listenership. And, you think about the hatred and the vitriol since October 7, right? And there are homes that have got the mezuzah, which is the typical signpost on it, and there are people who want to proudly display their Judaism and other people who don't. All of that is wrapped up in all of this. Bear in mind that there are a lot of people who are listening whose parents and grandparents escaped the Holocaust to come to a safe place like Australia. And I just don't think we can say we're safe anymore. So, and big venues are a prime target. And bear in mind that we were fortunate that we went through the Olympic Games without before the Olympic Games there were a few security threats and so forth, but it didn't come to pass. But there was, I think, wasn't there a heightened terror alert at some point that was put out again recently in Australia? So this is the society in which we live. Now, you can live your life under a rock and not go out and whatever, or you take a risk and you continue to live your life as you were. And both of you have suggested to me now that it doesn't even cross your mind. So that's great. It's great. I mean, there's nothing, you are in a closed environment, you are trapped. And, we've seen before that, was it Gargasoulis that ran riot through Melbourne and whatever? then we had a lot of other things that were going on that basically now in America FBI is talking about putting bulletproof sheets around former President Trump every time he gets up and speaks. There are new and unusual and bastardly ways that people are trying to get to other people. That's the world. It's a horrible world, Peter. Is it not?
But yes, but what do you do about it? As you say, if you don't go anywhere, you don't do anything, is that the appropriate response, or do you live your life as normal?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think you do live your life as normal, but I'd be saying you're more conscious, not that that can prevent anything, but you're more conscious of people around you. I mean, I've told you the stories before that, when 3 incidents have happened to me in relatively recent years. I mean, when I say relatively recent years, I was walking back from the cricket, Greg, at the MCG, and I was speaking on my phone to my son, and I was confronted by what I thought at the time was a couple of youths, and they basically said, give me your money and give me your phone, and I was in mid-call, and then in the shadows, and this was near the Shrine of Remembrance, so we're not talking about a long way out of the city. I was walking back to my car. There was a guy with a knife. So, I gave them what they wanted. But, I mean, that was just one incident. Another one, in my own street, I got confronted by a number of drunken youths who started pursuing me and said they were going to kill me. That's, so, does that mean I don't go out? No, it doesn't mean I don't go out, but I'm a lot more conscious of it, Peter. So have you incurred any incidents like what I've just described, Greg or Peter?
Not exactly. The worst I've had is when I was at the Nova Cinema and a group of Palestinian protesters invaded a screening, but they didn't do anything. They just shouted at us all. Right.
And that's, bad enough that you have to put up with that. But Greg, what about you?
Not really, no.
Okay. So, no, look, anyway, getting back to the movie now, Trap, I mean, it is far-fetched, but I did find myself readily involved, especially early on. I thought the intrigue was very well established, and there's a feeling of unease that permeates the piece from the get-go. Something's clearly not right, okay? And Cooper, the father's acting strangely. The daughter, Riley, can see it, but she can't put a finger on why, and she's so wrapped up in the concert and all the periphery around it that, she just sort of says, oh, Dad, just sort of come back and stop leaving, because he constantly gets out from next to her and says he'll be back in a few minutes. And it's readily relatable because, unfortunately, as we've talked about, in this day and age, we're acutely aware of the threat that being in a gathering, large gathering in particular, poses. And, I mean, I thought that Josh Artner, who we don't see a lot of, actually, he does a fine job portraying the disingenuous father. There's a real awkwardness about him, and his smile, that smile of his is creepy. So you can all but see his mind ticking over. I thought Ariel Donahue, well, she was quite impressive as the enthusiastic daughter, enjoying one of the best days of her life. And I really enjoyed Salika Shyamalan as the woman of the moment. She's actually a performer. I think she penned something like 14 songs for this picture. So she's a singer. And she's a woman, plays the woman who needs to keep her wits about her in her prominence within society. And I thought the production design on Trap was really first rate. I really appreciated the settings, the cinematography and the sound, and we kind of moved from this typical concert scenario to quiet suburbia. So, yeah, while M. Night Shyamalan has had his knockers since his big splash, a quarter of a century, it's hard to believe, have gone by since The Sixth Sense, which received 6 Oscar nominations, I might say. I reckon I've enjoyed several of his movies. This is another that well and truly passes muster. It's a good film. Sure, you need to suspend belief, but just go with it. Enjoy the wild ride. What do you reckon, Greg?
Well, like so many of the other films, it's driven by an intriguing premise, as I said a while ago, but with so many of his other previous films, it does begin to lose momentum and credibility, especially during the protracted and unnecessarily drawn-out third act, in which he gives us not one ending, not 2 innings, but 3 endings.
Yeah, it keeps on going, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And look, you've danced around it, but the trailer revealed that Josh Artner is the serial killer. So
I wish you hadn't said that. But
go over it. Get over it. That's why he's doing all he is. We know it from early on in the film, which is why he's doing all these things. And M. Night Shyamalan apparently described this as Hannibal Lecter at a Taylor Swift concert. There you go. But I like the production design and the camera work that goes through it, the arena, the stadium, as he checks out all these possible escape exits and ways to get out of the building. I thought it could have developed the character of Dr. Grant, the profile, a lot more to increase that tension of the cat and mouse game between.
Yeah, there wasn't much there, was it? It was almost like a cameo performance. It was more than a cameo, but there wasn't any real development of Peace other than she was clearly a sort of crusty, sort of long-serving, highly regarded FBI lead investigator.
That how they came across there. But it was a nice Hitchcockian cat and mouse game there, as Josh Hartnett's character has to try and figure out a way to leave the stadium and avoid capture and outwit the police there. So there's some suspense and tension as we follow him there. I thought the atmosphere was quite claustrophobic there, and the staging for the concert itself was quite elaborate there as well. The concert sequence was apparently actually filmed live on stage to create this authentic vibe.
Yeah, so they would have So they basically would have got all these extras in to watch. Wow. I mean, I thought it was. I loved the concert setting. I thought it was really effective, and the camera that was trained on Josh Hartnett, that skittishness about him, really works.
Yeah, I thought he did it. I thought he brought some charm, a sway of qualities to his role here as the occasionally goofy dad there, and I thought he completely inhabited the character there. And several of Shyamalan's films have explored a character with this dual personality, most notably James McAvoy in Split there. But I thought Hartnett played down the more psychotic nature of his character here, although it still makes him a slightly unnerving and creepy character, giving him a harder edge there. And there's some sort of perverse pleasure in watching him try to outwit the authorities here. But as I said, the film goes on a bit too long there with its 3 endings. And apparently, I was reading that this was apparently inspired by a real-life 1985 sting operation when the police arrested some 100 felons at a convention centre under the pretext of offering free NFL tickets as a way to flush them out.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the first time that's happened. And people's egos get in the way as well. And, I can get something for nothing. So, interesting. Okay. So, Peter...
I quite liked it.
Yeah, you quite liked it. And Peter, did you accept it? I mean, I suppose Greg and I are similar in as much as I really enjoyed it, but I thought, it just, the twists and twists and twists. Is that where it lost you?
To some extent, I think the concert sequences are very well directed, very well staged, and in fact, M. Night Shyamalan even has a cameo appearance in the film as he serves to somewhat assist the Josh Hartnett character and his daughter. But I don't know. The film started to lose me in terms of its plotting as soon as they left the concert. And that's where I had a problem with the film, because I think that's where a lot of Shyamalan's ideas started to dissipate. And I must say the setup in the concert was very good, but I don't think the character was particularly well developed, as in Josh Hartnett's character.
You're wanting the whys and wherefores, are you, in terms of what made him what he is?
I think so. I think there needs to be some sort of motivating factor, which is missing in the film. It just seems a little bit down pat. Although I thought it was really nice to see Hayley Mills, who at age 78 was cast in as a profiler in the film. I thought.
But do you agree? Do you agree with Greg that it could have been developed further?
Yes.
I mean, she was just there, right?
Yes.
She was the one who had she was the authority figure.
Yes.
But where was that? Right.
Yes, I agree, and that's part of the plotting that needed to be developed further. And especially some of the coincidences that happen in the concert where Hartnett is trying to escape the trap that he's in. a lot of those didn't quite ring true for me. I thought they were contrived.
So,
And
but I mean, so how? I'm just trying to think of the 105 minutes. How much of it is set in the concert? It's probably more than half, isn't it?
it's more than half, yes,
Yeah.
because the setup is quite intricate in terms of his daughter performing and so on, the live
Mind you,
performance.
The way that he gets into the bowels of the building and befriending somebody, etc., etc. You've got to also, suspend beliefs to some extent.
Yes.
There, and that's fine. I mean, I went with it. I mean, I think I enjoyed it more than you guys, both of you, notwithstanding that. Yeah, it twisted and twisted and twisted again, but I think I enjoyed it more. Any other remarks, Peter, or we'll get a score?
Look, as I said, as soon as he left the concert, that's where the film started to dissipate for me in terms of its twists and turns. I thought, how many contrivances can you build into the plotting without revealing anything? Yes.
M. Night Shyamalan a lot. Okay, so you'll give it the low score, which is Trap M, 105 minutes. What are you giving it?
Look, I thought this was one of his better films, and I gave it 7 out of 10.
Okay. No, it's good score. Greg?
Oh, I'll only go 6.5.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was going to say, Peter, you've been generous. I'm going 7.5. So it averages a 7. That's not a bad mark. It's a decent film. I would commend it, and I know a lot of people who did enjoy it, which is, in fact, Jackie unfortunately can't be with us today. She did send me a note at some point, so I'm now going to, this is really entertaining radio. I'm now trying to find Jackie's remark where I think she had similar reservations that we've expressed here, but basically it is what it is. So, yes, I can't find it for the time being.
She gave it 6.5. I know that much.
Pardon me?
She gave it 6.5.
Yes.
Oh, did she? Okay. Yeah. Right. So, Jackie, I'm sorry that I can't find your... I liaise with Jackie on 3 platforms, and I never know which platform she's right. And I think I do the same thing. Anyway. So, all right, let's move on, Jair. By the way, if you want to join up, please become a member. We'd love you to, because Jair is reflective of our community. So, I think it's $52 or $54. You just go to j-air.com.au, and you can subscribe, and you got 24 hours of programming, a lot of chat, some really good music, Israeli music, and you've also got just company, which is a really good thing. That's what radio does better than any other medium. So j-air.com.au and join up, become a subscriber. Now, Alien Romulus. Now, I know, Greg, you've seen this one.
Mm-hmm.
Peter and Greg, you go back to the great original and the great sequel. We've talked about sequels before. Very hard to make 2 really good movies, let alone 9 really good movies. And I suppose my overwhelming feeling from this one is disappointment, if it was one word. Before we get into the review proper, give me one word, Greg, on what you would say about this movie on Alien Romulus.
Scary.
All right. Now, Peter, you haven't seen this one yet, but you have seen the others.
Yes.
Do you think they've gone backwards?
Well, I mean, it's the same premise, the idea of this monster and all that sort of thing. So how do you make that fresh?
Yes, I totally agree. And that what they've done is they've done it for a new generation here, Peter. What they've done is they've given us, we've never had such a young cast before. And when you've got a young cast, apart from one, you've got a pretty noted writer and director in Fede Alvarez, who basically is with his frequent screenwriting collaborator, Rodo Sayegas. And Fede did Don't Breathe, which is a terrific movie. So you've got that, but you've also got Kaylee Spaney, who was so good in Priscilla and so good in Civil War. So that's the only name I was familiar with, Greg, in this movie. Were you familiar with any of the others?
Ian Holm?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes, they've brought back. Now, it's funny you jumped to that. That is something that that to me was a highlight of the movie. To bring him back
in the way they did, yeah.
In the way they did was absolutely mighty. Absolutely, like, it's spine-tingling stuff, and it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. They've done that with Carrie Fisher in Star Wars, haven't they? But and increasingly AI will enable things like this to happen, and to happen seamlessly, and to believe that they're still with us. And I think that's fabulous, really fabulous. But apart from those two, Greg, I didn't recognise anybody. Did you?
No, but that's something that
okay.
When the first Alien came out, half the cast was supposedly unknowns.
Yeah, valid. I mean, I was doing a count. This is the 9th movie in the franchise, right? It dates back to 1979. So if you include the Prometheus films, right? So, and the second picture was directed by James Cameron, you might remember. That was Aliens. So we had Alien, then Aliens. And Cameron actually met with Romulus's co-writer and director Alvarez early in this writing process. So Alvarez basically was inspired by deleted scenes from that movie, from Aliens. So that specifically involved a bunch of kids running among the workers in the colony where they were living, right? So the mining colony. And he thought about what it would be like for these teens to grow up and what would happen to them when they reached adulthood. So that was the spark that started Alien Romulus. So this is set, it's meant to be part of a trilogy of existing movies. So it's set about 20 years after the first Alien movie and some 37 years before Aliens, which came out in 1986. So obviously 1979, 1986, but yeah, that's the timing of Romulus. So you've got a character called Rain Carradine, that's the Kaylee Spaney one. She's the movie's protagonist and the heroine, and she's 25 years of age, and her parents have died, but she wants a better life for herself somewhere far beyond the mining planet Jackson Star, which is the colony where she lives. And she and a small group of others commandeer an old spaceship named Corbelan, and they head for a decommissioned space station hoping to find fuel to take them to a new world. That's it in a nutshell. And these space colonizers include Rain's brother Andy, played by David Johnson. You've got a synthetic or biomechanical humanoid who's very protective of her. That's what Andy is a synthetic. And you think about synthetics, well, the first to be introduced, Greg, to the Alien franchise was played by Ian Holm, correct? That was, I think his name was Ash, wasn't it, Peter, at the time? I don't know whether you remember. But
no.
Anyway, that was, so, okay, that's Back to the Future. Now, among the other youngsters on board this commandeered spaceship are Tyler, played by Archie Reno, who's Rain's ex-boyfriend. He also works in the mines. And then you've got his sister, Kay, played by Isabella Merced. So the Corbelan, the old spaceship, is piloted by the tech-savvy Navarro, played by Eileen Wu. And Eileen Wu was taken in, not Eileen Wu, Navarro was taken in by Bjorn's family. Bjorn, played by Spike Fern, taken on Jackson Star. And now Navarro thinks of Bjorn as a brother. And, of course, Bjorn, therefore, is also part of the expedition. So Corbelan docks with the decommissioned and derelict space station Renaissance. But little does the crew realise that while scavenging around Renaissance, it's got a couple of modules, Romulus and Remus, they will awaken the most terrifying organism in the universe. Of course, that's where Alien and Aliens kicks off. So Romulus, well, it seems to take an age to get to the starting line, to get to any real excitement as far as I'm concerned, the awakening of these aliens. And in the meantime, there's lots of crashing and banging. There's opening and closing of doors and obviously, accordingly, massive metallic sounds. Now, I don't know about you, Greg, but I found it difficult to understand the conversation between the youngsters ahead of the commandeering Corbelan. I found it difficult because of all the background noise. It was almost non-intelligible. And before the aliens take over and start running amok, the movie establishes the dynamic between the colonizers. Thereafter, we get the growth of the aliens into the vicious beings that they are. But I'm afraid it's what Peter said, same old, same old. With a few derivative critters, as you inevitably get, the rest of the picture's about getting the hell away from Renaissance and the dangers within it. And one thing you can be sure of is that there will be casualties. It's just a question of who and in what order. So I can't say that I was all that enamoured by the acting, although Kaylee Spaney does a serviceable job as Rain. Look, I found the whole thing underwhelming, and I was over Romulus before the final credits rolled. So to give it its proper title, Alien Romulus, rated MA, runs for 119 minutes, so just a minute shy of 2 hours. And yeah, apart from me and home, I wasn't really taken by it. Greg, what about you?
Well, this is more of a horror movie than a sci-fi film, given C.D. Alvarez's history of films like Don't Breathe and that. This plays out more like a horror film. And those monsters are actually quite nasty and scary in this one, especially those crab-like creatures that scuttle and run all over the place and attack people. You get lots more of the monster here too than we did in the original film. Kaylee Spaney, I think, did a good job as a sort of point-size variation on Sigourney Weaver's witch.
Sigourney Weaver, yeah.
Yeah, but the same. They repeat some of the same beats from the first two films, including a monster bursting out of someone's chest and the iconic line from Aliens as well. But I quite enjoyed it. I thought that the production design, the dark lighting and all that kind of stuff added to the uncertainty and the scariness of the film. But yeah, look, the human characters pretty much bland, ciphers, and you don't particularly care, apart from one or two of them, whether they get or not.
I just didn't think there was enough character development, quite frankly. Yeah. I would have liked more of that. And did you agree that it took forever to get to the starting line before we saw the first alien? I mean, I understand they were establishing it all, but they didn't do a particularly good job because you didn't really care.
Well, in the first one, it took a long time before we got the aliens to see as well. So they're sort of honouring some of the what Ridley Scott did in the first film.
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm going to go lowball on this. I'll give it a 5 out of 10, just a pass. What about you, Greg?
I'll give it 6.5.
Okay. Yeah, so you clearly thought more of it. I haven't read other reviews. I don't know how it's gone. Somebody said to me that the Herald Sun gave it a very good review. Sort of an 8 out of 10. I'm not sure that's true. I haven't read it, but
Lee Patch gave it four stars.
Wow. And have you seen anybody else's thoughts?
Sharon gave it 4.
Wow. Okay. No, I took a friend of mine who loves sci-fi, and he's not a big moviegoer, and he rang me up in the nicest possible way to abuse me for taking him to such an S.T film. There you go. That was just a member of the public who couldn't stand it, and he loves sci-fi. Just thought it just didn't get anywhere. And it's interesting that there was a couple of people. It was only like a half full cinema, maybe 3/4 that we saw the media preview in. And when I was chatting to the people who were around me, the young lady in front of me who looked like she was in her 20s, she hadn't seen the original, and she said, "Oh yeah, this was quite good." So I reckon
I don't think it matters if you haven't seen the originals anyway for this one.
No, I don't think it does either.
It's set up. Even though it is a bit of a sequel, it sort of stands up by itself. Stands alone.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Let me. Okay, we've given our scores. I want to talk a bit more about Murder for Two, which I'm raving about at Fairfax Theatre, because it's one of the cleverest and funniest pieces of musical theatre that I've had the good fortune to see, and it's a triumph of writing, performance, and also direction. And it is an outrageous murder mystery, a comedic whodunit with 2 actors filling 13 roles, and one of those 2 filling 12 of the 13. Now, it's a combination of mayhem and mirth and music. And what a heady combination it makes, or they make. So here's the premise. Dahlia Whitney is planning a surprise birthday party for her lauded and prolific author husband, Arthur. Okay, so imagine this, Greg and Peter, while I'm going through this and think of Agatha Christie. Now, in attendance are several of his friends, Arthur's friends. They include his niece, Steph, who's studying a graduate degree in criminology, psychiatrist called Dr. Griff, and a prima ballerina, Barrett Lewis. You've got Whitney's bickering neighbours, Murray and Barb Flandon, and the three remaining members of an all-boys choir, Timmy, Yonkers, and Skid are their names. And there's a firefighter called Henry Vivaldi, who will also put in an appearance later. So the lights are turned out. Have either of you gone to any surprise birthday parties in your lifetime?
No.
Yeah. Never?
No.
Wow. Greg?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I've been to quite a few of them, and I kind of like them. You know, it's especially when a person has no idea. Anyway, the lights are turned out, and gunshots ring out, and there is Arthur lying dead in a pool of blood. Now, we never see Arthur, right? So he's just talked about. First on the scene are officers Marcus Moskowitz and an unseen colleague called Lou, who's also an officer. And they're waiting for the investigator who's been assigned to the case, Detective Grayson, to arrive. So Officer Moskowitz has been traumatised by a past relationship with former partner Vanessa, who we also don't see. And he's out to prove to the chief that he's worthy of promotion due to his knowledge of crime scene protocol. And as such, he sets about trying to solve the crime before Detective Grayson gets there. And he begins interrogating the partygoers, all of whom are suspects. The plot thickens as it appears each one of them had their reasons for wanting Arthur done away with. Okay, so you can see, Greg, where the analogy to Agatha Christie books comes in, right? So Murder for Two takes the best ingredients of Agatha Christie and kicks it up several notches with unbridled hilarity. It's been written by Kellen Blair and Joe Canossian. Lyrics are by Blair, music by Canossian. And it's so witty and so wonderful. It premiered back in 2011 at the Chicago Shakespeare Theatre. And this Hayes Theatre production, directed by Richard Carroll, is bursting with energy and vibrancy. The performers are Maverick Newman, who takes to the stage in a flamboyant pink top, and Gabby Bolt. They are sensational. Their stagecraft, incredible. Their repartee, heaven on a stick. You've got a black baby grand piano centre stage. They tickle the ivories brilliantly together, and then one by one. So they're sitting alongside each other. They're putting their hands over one another, and they just phenomenal. And so then one of them takes the piano, the other acts and sings up a storm. Neither misses a beat. It is faultless as the action unfolds at a rapid rate. Newman is the one who fills a multiplicity of roles and switches characters seamlessly and so acrobatically, as if shelling peas, and puts on a comic tour de force. Matching him stride for stride, often as the exasperated fall guy, is Bolt. What an amazing dynamic combination. What a treat. The highlights are plentiful, including Newman flinging himself about the stage, literally sort of incredibly, in a grand look-at-me performance, and Newman miming with Bolt at the piano and singing. Wow. Shannon Burns has done a mighty job choreographing all the right moves. You got this wood-panelled backdrop complete with lots of books, providing a strong sense of place. And the set and costume designer, Kirthi Subramanian, has done a great job. It's grand entertainment, Murder for Two. Laughs are turned up at every turn. So much fun, with the ultimate and the most fulsome praise I can possibly give left to the two performers, Maverick Newman and Gabby Bolt, for creating what I see as musical theatrical magic. It is one I urge you in capital letters, do not miss it. As I've said, it's very reasonable pricing. Well, depending upon obviously everybody's individual financial circumstances, but far cheaper, far more cheapens it. I don't want to say cheaper, and I've already said it. Let's say far more cost effective than a lot of musical theatre productions. Not that I'm not saying they're not worthy of more, but this is at least at a level where hopefully more people can get to it. It's 100 minutes without interval. It's on at Fairfax Theatre at the Arts Centre until the 25th of August, and I am going to give this the perfect score. This is a 10 out of 10 production. It is wonderful, wonderful entertainment, and it's the first perfect score I've given to anything this year, Gregory King. There you go.
There you go.
So, yeah, and Peter, if ever I can drag you along to the theatre, this is the one I would want you to see, right? I mean, it's just so special. Anyway, that's that. I also saw an interesting show. If I mention to you, if I use the word suffragette, can you give me a name, either of you?
Emily Pankhurst.
Well done. That's the one. Emmeline Pankhurst. And that's what I think most of us would think of, Peter. Jenny, Jennie, with an exclamation mark, put on by Melbourne Writers Theatre at Gasworks, is on now. And, I mean, this is a story about another woman associated with a movement called Sarah Jane Baines, who lived from 1866 to 1951, and she was known as Jenny. And she was a British Australian feminist and social reformer. And she was driven to create a more equitable society, and she focused on improving conditions for women and children. And it's a dramatisation of her life story. It combines fact and fiction, and it moves from a London in the 1890s. You'd be familiar with the term Speaker's Corner, would you not, in the UK, Greg and Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So she used to speak. One of the early scenes is her pushing for access to food, water, and medicine for everybody at Speaker's Corner in the British capital, right? And this is a place where free speech is encouraged. And this is a woman who is no angel. In fact, she was jailed no less than 15 times for, these are my words, crimes of insurrection before she, her husband, and family were smuggled out of England to Australia to avoid further punishment. So it's a very interesting story. And then with her husband, George, supporting her all the way, he was a cobbler, ran a successful business, Baines tried out for a position on an all-male council. And unfortunately, again, society at the time, it wasn't to be. And she was labelled a communist. She was duly rebuffed. So it's a very interesting story. I'd actually think it'd make a very interesting film, quite frankly. And you've got 6 performers, a number of whom play different roles. And I was particularly keen. It's written by a Melbourne-based playwright called B.W. Shearer, and it's quite insightful into the sights and sounds of working-class neighbourhood of Port Melbourne. And alongside, when you're in the foyer there's a display by the Port Melbourne Historical and Preservation Society, kind of like a time capsule of the suburb. So I thought that sort of dovetailed very, very nicely. The 2 leads are Marley Van de Bedgel, and she was really, really good as Jenny. A lot of belligerence in the role, and the softer tone of Amir Rahimzadeh as her husband. Both are really polished, but the performances overall were pretty strong. And a big winner, again, the wooden set design with its nooks, crannies, and signage by the set designer gave me a strong sense of where we were at. So, quite a commendable work by director Karen Lee Gregg, and it is called Jenny, Jennie, and basically you have till today to see it. So, go along to the last performance. Why not? Absolutely, if you can get a ticket, because it's been very, very popular. Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for being with us today. And Peter Krauss, a pleasure to have you too. And we will do it all again very soon on First on Film and Entertainment.
And Valet to Jenna Rowlands, the
actress. Yes, I'm very pleased. I'm so sorry that I didn't mention it earlier, because I agree. Wow, yeah, 94 she was.
Yes.
Speak to you very soon. Over and out from First on Film and Entertainment.